All right. All right. Peace. Today I'm here for questions, builds. I'd like to hear what your thoughts are about who are the 5%. I mean, not the 5%, excuse me. Who are the 10%? You know, everybody seems to know who a bloodsucker is. And then in the common parlance, the common reality of the everyday individual, 10%ers are the 85s that are around him. You know what I mean? God Infinite Mind, live from Panama. And man, that's dope. Yeah, that's peace, God. That little clip that you had in the record store, that was fire, man. That was fire. And the performance is this just looking good, guy. Man, hope I get to see some clips for the show tonight. But, chiseled the effect, right? Indeed, God. You know, I've been thinking about today's degree because we go around daily though, and we don't see the macro very well. Who's the 10%? The people above us, the people blood sucking, and the wielders of the blood sucking. It's usually our doing, and this is what leads people to be um, so negative against their people and things like that. You know what I mean? I was thinking about this because a lot of times I leave class, not this class, really. I'll leave the different schools I go to, and be like, wow, was it really worth it? You know what I mean? And then whenever you say it's worth it, you're also acknowledging that your percentage is terrible percentage. Um, and I always talk about that. The percentage is what? What do you expect to be done when you share and you teach? If we simplify teaching to just sharing, what do you expect when you share? See, it becomes a little bit more selfish on your part. If teaching is just sharing and then you expect something to be given to you, some in this case, the behavior, the way that you're received, the way that your information is received, you know, um, if you're expecting things, well, that's what happens, right? That's what happens. You turn something that is supposed to be selfless into something that is quite selfish. And the 5%, our history, we kind of are supposed to be sharing selflessly, but in a lot of ways, though, we deal with the same, um, recruitment obsessions. You know, certainly deal with the same recruitment obsessions, and it's something that Infinite Mind would know about. You know what I mean? Because I was always very against that and speaking out against that. Um, Always content to just share, and if nobody got it, I'll do my best to see that it is not my own fault, and try to repair that on my end. But the longer you share things, the more that you develop a strategy, uh, for making it clever, for making it sound exotic, cool, the thing to do, and you amass students that way. That's always been a way that I didn't want to go. You know what I mean? Never wanted to go that way. You know. We talk about the 10%. What are the bloodsuckers of the poor? Because if we're teaching this knowledge, and we're teaching it self-serving, because we really, and trust me, this is a thing. People are teaching not because they care to teach, but because they don't want to be alone. I don't think that's a good enough reason for anything. I don't think that's a reason to date. I don't think that's a reason to have children. Certainly don't think that's a reason to go out and teach this knowledge of self. It's very difficult. not to understand. So if you teach it to somebody and they get it, and you're all hype about yourself, this isn't that hard to understand. It's hard to deal. It's hard to live it. It's not that hard to understand, you know? And see, that's the thing. People find people that they can understand this knowledge, and they figure that the barrier then is really that we got to convince them that it's the thing to do. And then that's where the proselytizing and the, gross religious fallout, whatever you want to call it, happens. But that's not. Um, I'm not exaggerating when I say that I certainly was a rebellious, not a rebellious I had a rebellious experience doing this. And in many ways, it was not the normal, the expected way, the typical way of teaching people and letting them go. Meaning that I'm not forcing them to know this stuff. I'm not convincing or anything like that, And I didn't care because people justify, as we do, especially in the capitalist society, we justify our existence by the productivity. What do we produce? And listen, I do that myself. I don't know if it's a capitalist thing, but we had to categorize in that way. I read a certain amount of pages a week. I train. I write a certain amount of journal pages. I have to do certain amounts of book work, right? And some of these things, like the book work, it's never satisfying. Things are only satisfying until they're complete. So they're never done completely. They're never done fully. Is this a capitalist notion of accumulation, standards of productivity? See, the lines have been so blurred that we can't even see the goodwill of consistent logged work, as anything else but steps of capitalistic endeavor, the nature of capitalistic endeavor. But when it comes to teaching, I do accumulate. What I accumulate, though, is the time, right? So I accumulate the time. I will be here every week consistently, right? And that consistency even, probably was the lowest in my COVID years, right? Probably attended or streamed class maybe 48 times a week, 47. That to me was a lot less because that's like about 5 classes missed, because of circumstances. It was very difficult, because I'm all the way far away from school. And I had different responsibilities, so I would even be tied up even when I was only able to stream. But my average was always around 50 out of 52, at the very least. The reason I'm saying this, though, is that we have to analyze what influences are we taking from society and what influences are we not. When we talk about who is the 10%, we're looking at a structure. We're not finding individuals. And the more harder we look for individuals, the more that we find our own people. You have not been around the 10%. You have generally been around 85ers going for theirs and hustling. You know what I mean? It's really what you've been around, Right? Nobody's seen most people that do music nowadays, for example, good music, bad music, doesn't matter. They're doing it on their own, and they've never even seen the typical, the white man controlling the label, like Jizza said, playing the electric guitar with deep pockets. I'm doing that verse all wrong. Haven't heard it no more. I have to listen to it so I can karaoke it. Right? It's crazy. Yeah. It really has been a long time since I heard that song. Yeah, I think I'm talking about Protect Your Neck. Yeah. Like, listen to the whole thing through. I haven't heard it in a long time. You know, there's so much music I study today that I don't, you know. But onward. Who's the 10%? What are the 10% structures? If we had to pick a structure, what would it be? You know, people like get knowledge though. I've always been, you know, because I was radicalized. You know, I was radicalized in the tradition of revolution, independence for Borinquen, the plight of original people, uh, in really neo-slavery everywhere in the world through corporations, multinationals, free trade zones, um, pharmaceutical, biopharmaceutical industry in Puerto Rico, right, and how they affected Puerto Rico, right, massively, right, all these things, right. So it was always twofold for me. The 10% has to deal with the 5% has to deal with dealing with the 10% on all levels, and the macro level certainly counted. And when I used to think to myself, what is the biggest institution that really ought to be toppled? Okay, it was always going back to capitalism. You know, and I say this to mind your answers. Mind your answers, because most of our answers are things that the media told us. Right? Great book. I just started it because I read other Noam Chomsky things, but reading Manufacturing Consent slowly but surely. It's technically some of it is outdated, so it's more of a history book of how they did the propaganda. But because it doesn't exist that way anymore, it's really a great history book now. But because so much of it is still relevant in nature. But this blood sucking propaganda, the media, and things like that, these are real things. These are real things. You know, I remember the guys that showed me the concept why Biggie should be the GOAT MC, saying, and their only major work to dismiss wasn't Karis One, it wasn't Rakim, nobody. Chuck D, LL Cool J, you know, because he's got some right to the actual, not just because he made it the term GOAT, but he's got some right to the claim, you know, just for his career, right? They said Biggie was the GOAT, and then the only person that they contended with was Tupac. And they said Tupac's an entertainer, Biggie's the MC. And I thought to myself, that's some bullshit. Tupac has more quotables than Biggie. He has songs where every single line is a quotable. Not because it's a fly word, but because it's iconic. The entire Dear Mama. You know what I mean? How about that? You know? Biggie doesn't have songs like that. Doesn't even have those topics. Can't even hit the topics. But he's more technically gifted. So, right? Same people that would, you know, what's funny? Same people that say Biggie is better than Tupac, be usually on some rah rah Brooklyn stuff. Um, they'll say Biggie's better than Tupac because he's more technically gifted, and at the same time they'll hate everything else. Say it's lyrical miracle shit, inconsistency because it's not a good argument. But I'm saying I'll say this, that the argument that Biggie's MC, Tupac's the entertainer. Um, I was there. I was there with the guys that made that up. It's a yarn. It's a shtick. I was there when they made it up. Maybe a year later, 2 years later, I'm walking around and have conversations with people about hip hop. turns to Biggie and Tupac, I'm hearing the same lines. And it becomes very real. The things that people say, the media controls. They control narratives. Okay? If you tell me if one of your relatives or something watches MSNBC all day, I could tell you without ever hearing her exactly what she thinks about everything. And the tone that she has. And the massive dismissal for the Democratic Party's ills and devilishment. If you tell me they listen to Fox News, I can do the same thing in the reverse order. And yet both are never hearing about the devilishment of each other, about themselves. It's all just justifications. This is what I'm talking about. You know? So who is the 10%? This poor part of the planet Earth. What's a bloodsucker? They walk around. The 85 is constantly putting themselves in the position of the bloodsucker. And they take on that role oftentimes. Many times they take on that role. Who's experiencing the 10%? Not just the macro, but the micro right in front of you. It's very rare. Right? Very rare. Halftime, peace. Please ask me. Peace to Qasim, Malik. Rio, peace to the God. Yeah, halftime, shoot away. I'm here to answer questions. I'm here for an hour. Okay. Yeah, so. All right. How we deal with devilishment. How do we confront it? How do we justify it? Media yarn. We had established, though, many years ago that the same scholars, right? About the Puerto Rican influence. Massive influence in co-creating breaking. From the uprocking to be some of the first people to go down on the floor. Signature stuff. Defines the actual element. I've read books that say Puerto Ricans had nothing to do with hip hop, and then tell you that but they were the first ones to go on the floor. It's a good book called Breakbeats in the Bronx. Terrible scholarly work. It's a shit scholarly work. And he says that. Right? Selective reading, selective dismissal, all these things, you know. Let me know halftime. Let me know. I'm here all this time right here, okay? I'll be here till, about 7:40. Right? The reason I'm saying that is because I was there when the scholars were proven, other scholars have shown and proven to other scholars, Latinos had a massive influence. I was there. From the gangs that developed into the street culture, all that. I don't want to go into it all now. All of it. Right? Like my man King Class, right? Show you gang photography of the 70s. A lot of unity. Between black and brown. And at those times, brown was significantly majority Puerto Rican. But they don't want to hear it. And then I hear the 5% saying the same things, right? Talking about Puerto Ricans and Latinos. Some of them even including me in it. Because I'm not that in. I'm not that. I'm the true living God. Man. You said so the cultural degree in the 1 to 14 and the 36th degree in the 1 to 40. Are we expected to think that all this occurred within the first year of the devil actually being in existence? It doesn't make sense to me. All right, ask away, guys. I'm trying to think about what your question is saying. The devil could be magnified, cause television, and the original people could get to the bottom of it. And where do you come on? Where do you come to the conclusion? Where do you come to the conclusion that it happened in 1 year, right? And if it happened that fast, why wouldn't that contrast be glaring? Because the whole point of them being exiled in the beginning is because they were sloppily, savagely dove right into it. They made an obvious crime in the beginning. They were blatantly doing this. A major part of the build is that they had to be taught by Musa to do this right and exact. Musa had to come over, the civilizer, the great civilizer, right? Musa, whether we want to most likely say it's plural, Musa, not just individual, but regardless, not irregardless, that's not a word. Regardless to that conjecture, right? To that little argument there. Um, they read the the thing that when you read Elijah's work, especially, it gives more detail. The devil was super savage, and he was not confined. He was not restrained. He had, he had no decorum at all, and that was to be made clear that he had to be taught tricknology, the science of it to a deeper level. Right? So it's a fast time. Why is it fast for you? Why would blatant devilishment, not concealed, not hidden, why would it not be exposed immediately in a society that that, as we're told, never experienced it in that fashion? Okay? And that's the thing I think that, I don't know, for me, it was always a glaring thing, right? They never experienced that in that fashion. So the immediacy, the immediacy by which they would have been recognized could be very quickly. Okay, so what do you mean by international voyages, though? Right? What time period? Where are they traveling? Where's the devil traveling? Right? He gets exiled. They didn't give a time period for how long it took to exile him. Like how long it took to march him up, right? You put him in the rope that binds in, right? How many? They didn't give it. They didn't give days or something like that. And when we think about it, it must have taken a very, very long time. He's gone, right? Had to take a very, very long time for that to happen. I missed a question here. That's funny, Rio. You're funny. Program, you said peace, God. I want to ask you. I see you have an interview with Sadat X soon. What was his perspective on how he sees Lord Jamal shenanigans? I've interviewed Sadat X. I've been with the God many times, and I know Sadat X. I did not have an interview with him recently, though. Okay, I interviewed him for one of his. The last interview was for one of his albums. Very good album, of course. But that was a long time ago. Maybe 2 years ago. He does have. Now, I was interviewed with what's his name? Uncle Nick, my brother Low, Uncle Nick. But um, Uncle Nick then interviewed Sadat. We were not interviewed together. Um, yeah, it's totally different. Yeah. Now, as far as like what's Sadat X, like I don't think that. I think he was very clear about what he was saying. I don't know. I don't know what. I think what Sadat X is most bothered by, and I built with him about this, and I could share this. Um, this division causing division and riling up people, um, and it's not in a positive way. You know, speaking about original people in a negative way, it's separating, and you know, and it's sad though, right? I should be able to speak about what I think about history and music in a scholarly and respectable fashion as I give it. But that doesn't happen with Lord Jamal because he's not a scholar. He's barely a musician, right? Is the end goal of the study of science of the devil to be better equipped to deal with the color man, or is the purpose of study to be better equipped to deal with our own ego? You know what's interesting? There's so much to think about in that question, Rio, because how to deal with the colored man, right? A lot of times people deal with this knowledge stuff even to assimilate themselves and acclimate to the devil, like almost a maladaptation. And a lot of 5% or people that get this knowledge, I'll leave that's better said that way. Um, they have not dealt with the devil, they devilishment and to exile it from the cipher. They're more like, excuse me, maladapting to it. That's not good, you know? Um, and I think a lot of ways when you talk about devil, a lot of it is our own ego, you know what I mean? Man, Rio, this last year, right? All this hip hop beef and everything. Not one white person in hip hop had an issue. None. Black people that were hating brown people, high hell, they didn't have an issue with white people. It was quiet, right? So yeah, I think a lot of it, the devilish is our own ego, and I think that the best preparation to deal with the devil is to deal with your own ego. Yeah. You maladapt to the devil, meaning that you end up doing devilishment because it occurs. See, a justification in a capitalist society, especially, is to do certain things because it occurs. You know what I mean? It's going to get done, so might as well. There'll always be blank type of devilishment. So I might as well, right? By this case, though, that makes prostitution and drugs and all that pretty much an acceptable standard because it is a consistent thing throughout history, right? It's always going to happen. Right? Very, very, very negative. Very dangerous and slippery slope. You know? And halftime, I think that you're looking too into it. I think the lenses of history, when we're dealing with, we have to look at history in a context where we could never understand all of it. Meaning, we are empathizing with history. We don't have a framework to understand what it is like with no devil. It's no white man. It's no oppressor. And everybody says, oh, the white man is stuck. That's racist. I'm going to say this again. The white man's existence doesn't really exist without him being an oppressor. No matter what white people say today, in general, they are still the oppressor. That has been their major role, their dominant role. So how do we know in history what it really feels like to be in a situation without that, without even the devil? So then you can imagine and really think about it and empathize and try to see it, what it was like though when the first devils popped up, seemingly weak, but unfolding wickedness that had to be at that time very blatant, contrasting. That's a better word. Contrasting wildly, you know? Yeah, opportunistic thinking, right? But that's the maladaptive nature that we've learned in this society. You know what I mean? You know, that's what we learned. By the way, the last time I interviewed Sadat X officially, like on the record, not off the record, Bill, was 2022 for the Science of Life album. I think in that album, Rock Marciano did the beats. It's a good album, real good album. As every Sadat album is, they're always up to snuff. Right? The bloodsuckers teach the poor lies, right? To make them believe that the true and living God, the almighty true and living God, is a spook. It cannot be seen with the physical eye. Piece of the God, self-magnetic. Boy. Oh, man. When we think about it in this parameter, right? Do we really see a 10% in our daily lives? The truth is we do. That's really the point I'm getting at. It's not this mythical, Caucasoid creature that we see every day, But it is a devil that is cracking a whip, is a lot of absentee ownership. Devil does a lot of absentee ownership. You know what I mean? Right? So much absentee ownership that distracts you. Right? Algorithms. It's a lot of things, man. A lot of things. Everything is hurting right now. The training is great, but when I stand still, I can feel everything. It's good and it's bad. It's good and it's bad. It doesn't feel good, but it lets you know everything. Become more in tune with your body. I'm feeling it now, right? But also too when you're fasting, you know. All right, so the knowledge power degree, right? This is what we're talking about. Knowledge power degree. What? So how do we knowledge power? How are we the activity of knowledging power? And in this case, I mean acknowledging power. The powers against us that are around us, right? The inhibitions to equality. Knowledge the power that inhibits the equality. I gave a negative build there, right? This is all absentee ownership. This is all functioning system. For years, I've always been teaching that capitalism is a perfected tool of devilishment, perfected system of devilishment, right? That's right, Rio. The internal, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. The internal power, right? And it's why you have to use things in a constructive way. The expected tools will be given. We've been given tools, expectations to measure everything, collect wealth, always be consuming. Our business mindset always expanding, taking more and more and more, right? Let me know your questions. I feel like there was a question that never really got in here. Uh, I just wanted to read that and make sense of it, Bill. If you acknowledge the power of the devil's equality, you acknowledge the internal power to our own equality. That's what I meant by the science of the devil. He's gonna do what he's gonna do, but if I don't rely on him, then what he do don't matter. Oh man, real easier said than done, right? That's really it. But it's so much more. It's easier said than done. It's like dealing with this knowledge is easier said than done. That's what I have found with most people. You think that when people are here and you're around people and they turn away from it and stuff like that, you think it's because the concept is odd? There's no odder concept than waiting for a mystery god to bring you food. Nothing odder, more odder. How do we deal with devilishment? Right? Continue to work on your standards, what you will accept, what codes you won't break, and then work on not breaking them. And instead of working on things from a negative perspective, you don't work on principles from a negative perspective because mathematics reveals the principles through a positive progression. Plan things. Really say he gonna? Yeah, okay, I read that. Right. Thought I didn't read that. All right. Anybody has any builds? Anything? I'm here for another 20 minutes, guys. I'm here for another 20 minutes. And just have some thoughts on my mind. Knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. A true and living idea, incorruptible idea that is thrust outwardly. Structures inequality. What ought to be is out there in the proper position. That's building mathematically. So, for example, if Jamar was satisfied with his own career, he wouldn't have turned into an internet troll. Yeah, probably. Yeah, it had come, and it's not even a diss to him, but sometimes the notoriety, like the acting and this and that, sometimes the notoriety of a career peaked. It reaches a peak. But you said the devil's actions were because his ego whipped his. Yeah, absolutely, it did. You know what I mean? It did. All right, let me see your builds. How do people see it? Let's see what we have here. Oh, this is no good. Good thing I noticed that. All right. It's May, about to be summer. Summer, you take less. The average person takes less time studying, reading, and sometimes even creating. Even if you use a creative, very important. Yeah. So with that Sadatics thing, I did do an interview about Jamar and all that crap. Uncle Nick's YouTube page. He interviewed me. I'm sorry, Rio. You're asking me about which set is what? Let me know. I'm a little confused. Um, I'm a little ahead, so sometimes I feel like the questions are for something back then, right? Oh, because the answer to today's degree in the 1 of 40 relates to the degree in the 1 of 36. Um, the answer to today's degree, right? The knowledge part relates to today's degree in the 1 of 36. Yeah, it does. It does. It certainly does. Knowledge power of who the rich are and who the poor are. Rich people live a mentality of a poor person, which makes them rich, and a poor person lives a mentality of a rich person, which keeps them poor. I've heard that before. Similar ideas. Okay. Yeah, Rio, you're right. I mean, it's assumption there because you have to assume that other than righteous means devilish, right? It's not a bad assumption. There's a part of me wants to say it's an assumption. Muslims other than righteous doesn't always mean devils. It means people that are ignorant doing the wrong thing. How do we defend against the 10%? How do we identify the habits, the lifestyle aspects, our decision-making skills, the perspectives that we take when we look at things, politics, news, outside, how we deal with principles, what we expect of our people, how we get disappointed. All of this is affected by the 10%. They need not be here anymore. All of that affects all of that. Okay? Rio says, "Hello, life. You should build on knowledge and the refinement as well." I was thinking about not in that sense though, but it was very interesting, because everywhere I went today, I was in P.E.A.C.E mainly, but everywhere I went, I was the only guy that had a cricket sweater, so it was definitely different. Self-magnetic. You said dealing with the babies. I like to keep it simple to observe knowledge, the facts, power from which I share quality to improve or change your current ways. Why is facts power? Knowledge to reserve the facts. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Why is facts power? How does facts become power? Not saying it's not. I'm just saying that in the context of things, it can be. I just don't want to. I don't want to make your build make sense. I want you to make your build make sense. Another way for saying useful truth. Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. All right. What, in a positive way, what type of power does the knowledge actually need to reach inequality? Right? That's right. That's the positive question. Because we had a lot of negative question. What's the positive question? All right. Guys, I'm here for 10 more minutes. Let me hear. Let me hear. All right, let me hear. The This is a very important question. Okay? What type? We know the facts are just true and living knowledge, truth. What type of power does it need to reach an equality? Specific examples help. King, you said today's mathematics is knowledge power. Peace of God. Knowledge is the mental result of one's perception, learning, and reason. The results. Very interesting, the results. How do we know, King, that these results are right and exact, that they can be called knowledge? Power is the ability to do, act, control in a righteous way with that knowledge. There's a clue to the answer about what I said. This is why refinement is so well placed as a focus to your build. Power is wielded. But when the gods build with it, it is not something to just wield. It's something to control. Think of power like fire. And that is the thrust, the knowledge that your life takes when you deal with knowledge and you live out your understanding. That's your culture. Right? That's right. The zigzag zig. Knowledge plus wisdom plus understanding. It needs wisdom, actual action, and understand the fluidity of said action that is gained through repetition. I like that. The fluidity of said action. Huh. That's gonna stay in my head for a while. Correct, King. Ability of fluids. Guys, these mathematics are not just things that are said to you, they're philosophical discourse. Okay? You know, all of us though, with this knowledge, we are all theologians. Right? We are really studying the nature of God. You know what I mean? And no, we don't study religious belief to embrace it, but because we study the ways of man. Yes, we do. We study the ways of man. We study it to change it. And we are still steeped in studying the nature of the religious belief. I don't like it. I don't like to study it. But when the studies take us there, we have to go. Right? Yeah, no, yeah. You much real see it in a 5% paper or somewhere. You'd be like, yo, I want my copyright with that. Knowledge is P.E.A.C.E. Knowledge is aspects of awareness. Power is the ability to produce an outcome. I liked it when you said like, very good. That's very good. Very good. Ability to produce an outcome. Then that outcome is the equality. Bring forth the equality. You say you see equality as peace, though. I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that. The knowledge is powered. The knowledge empowers all to reach the state of equality and balance. You said equality is peace and balance. Be aware of other people's or things that have power over you, knowledge of power, and how to take your power back, bring equality back to reality. Guys, these are wow. These are really, really great builds. Guys, I'm not finished with it yet. As we close out this class, I'm not finished with it yet, but I am beginning to get the format down and write down some notes. That means it's not in any kind of order, but it'll get pasted correctly. The 1 to 10 plus lesson study sheet. It's gonna be like I call it a study sheet. Like I'm doing it like the 1 to 36, and I'll do it for the 1 to 10, 1 to 14, and the 1 to 40. It'll have some of my understanding. It'll be noted that it's my understanding, but it'll be noted as perspective for you to build. They confuse power with energy because energy is an output, and so is power. Power produces, allows the output. So I get how it's confused. I certainly get it. But when we talk about power, though, we're really talking about its reach, the reach of knowledge, the reach of the culture, and the influence of the culture. That's why I've always called it propulsive influence. Very active, guided, directed, and controlled in propulsive influence. The control, refinement is the control of the power. It's not just blurted. You say, and even if you said power is the truth, the truth cannot just be blurted. It has to be controlled. Nuance for every situation. No one gives out knowledge and just yells it out. Not us. Not us 5%. We share it particularly properly. Right? So guys, with that said, I would love to hear more builds. Sunez97@gmail. Guys, a lot of you guys have my number. Text me a build, all that. I'm always busy, so don't put that in the equation of whether you need to build with me. Right? Just tell me, like Sunez, I like to build. We build. You know what I mean? We keep moving on. Okay. Rio really had it hit on the head. It really is about the ego. The reason I'm saying is asking you, where is the 5%? All that kind of shit. Funny kid. Is most of us are running with the programs we've been programmed with. And that's something to take note of. All right. And with that said, I'm going to let everybody go. I'm going to say peace. Sunez97@gmail.com. Build. If you get 120 from me, we definitely got to build. And let's get there. Let's add on. All right. Peace.